the Watcher of Winter Hill, in the late 1800s, nestled in a sleepy valley, was the town of Winter Hill, a quaint but isolated place surrounded by dense, towering forests. The townspeople lived quietly, their routines guided by the rise and fall of the sun. But the peace of Winter Hill was shattered when one winter night, strange markings began appearing around town. Deep, twisted scratches in door frames, odd symbols painted on windowsills, and strange mounds appearing in front of homes. At first, people thought it was the work of pranksters, children, or even wild animals from the woods. But then the whispers began. It started with Mrs. Hemsworth, who swore she saw a figure watching her from the trees, tall and thin, with long fingers that seemed to reach into the shadows. She couldn't make out a face, just piercing silver eyes that glowed in the dark. After a few nights of this unsettling sight, Mrs. Hemsworth vanished, leaving only those twisted marks on her doorframe and a mound of earth in front of her house. Panic spread like wildfire. Each night, another person would claim they'd seen the Watcher, and soon, they too would disappear without a trace. A young couple, Thomas and Evelyn, decided they would uncover the truth. They stayed up late, stationed at their window with a lantern, determined to catch a glimpse of this mysterious Watcher. Hours passed, and just as the clock struck 3 in the morning, Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. There, at the edge of the woods, was the figure, a looming shadow that seemed to blend with the night itself. Its eyes were silver, just as Mrs. Hemsworth had described, but something about its gaze made Evelyn shiver. It wasn't the look of a living creature, but something beyond, like an entity observing them from another plane. Thomas tried to chase it, sprinting toward the woods as Evelyn shouted for him to stop, but he didn't listen. The townspeople found his footprints in the snow the next morning, trailing off into the forest and ending abruptly as if he had vanished mid-step. Evelyn, heartbroken and terrified, was left to face the night alone, and she continued to see those silver eyes watching her every night thereafter. A few days later, Evelyn herself disappeared, leaving only a message carved into her windowsill. The Watcher comes when the clock strikes 3. Winter Hill's story faded into local legend, but some say that on cold winter nights, if you stand at the edge of the forest when the clock strikes 3, you might see the silver eyes staring back at you. Just be careful, because the Watcher of Winter Hill doesn't like being disturbed.